Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us to this webinar. My name is Pierre Arnold. I collaborate with the International Center for Community Land Trusts, which is a charity based in the United States. And I will be co-moderating, facilitating this space with Tarcyla Fidalgo from Catalytic Communities, who will introduce herself in a moment. We have interpretation available, so please feel free to select the globe icon and choose your language in order to activate interpretation. And please remember to keep your microphones muted during the session. And if you have any questions, please, for now, put them in the chat, and there will be a moment at the end where we will take some questions and you will be able to speak also. But for now, please have your microphones muted, and if you want to communicate in the chat about your organizations, where you're from, and what brings you here, feel free to use the chat also to let us know about any technical issue. So just thank you to UN Habitat in Brazil for hosting this space, for facilitating this webinar. This webinar takes place in the framework of Urban October, which is a month dedicated to urban issues for the United Nations. And our webinar is going to highlight the work of three community leaders from different countries in Latin America, who we're going to introduce in a second. But for now, I give the floor to Tarcyla Fidalgo from Catalytic Communities.
Hi, everyone. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Tarcyla. I am from Brazil. I coordinate the Favela Community Land Trust project. That's a project that aims to introduce the community land trust model in Brazil, and probably Ana will talk a little bit more about it in her presentation, because she and her community are part of this project. But I'm also the lead of the Global South Initiative in the International Center for Community Land Trust. We are together with CatCon and UN Habitat organizing this event to talk a little bit about communitarian forms of ownership, of stewardship of land. I will very quickly share my screen just to let you know a little more about the Global South Initiative. Okay, I think now everyone is seeing my screen. So the Global South Community Land Trust Initiative, it is an initiative from the International Center for CLTs. The International Center is an NGO that have the mission to promote and support community land trust and similar strategies of community-led development on community-owned land in countries throughout the world. So we work with education, research, training, network exchange, strategic communications, advocacy, innovation to support groups and communities all around the world. And we know that, especially in the Global South, we have a scenario of lack of knowledge about community-led ownership models, especially about community land trust. You can definitely learn more about this specifically model in our website or getting in touch with us. So the community land trust is a model that aims to guarantee the preservation of the communities by separating the ownership of the land and the ownership of the houses. So it is a very well-known model all around the world. It is in the new urban agenda, and we have this scenario of community land trust application in the world, and we are now doing this effort to raise awareness, to spread the word about this model, especially in the Global South. We know that the Global South has some unique challenge And community land trust is another models that we will hear about today, could definitely help us to address it in a community-led basis. So in the Global South, we have the potential of the community land trust to protect communities against displacement, to secure collective land rights, to center community governance, adapt to be a model that could be adapted to local context, and to maintain affordable housing in urban areas. There is a very important challenge that we face in the Global South. So we have this initiative. We are now helping to go through this event and to get you all know the experience that we will discuss today. And you can have here our contact if you want to get in touch to understand more about the initiative, about the CLT model. We will definitely put all this information in our chat too. And well, let's move on to our guests because we definitely want to hear from them. Thank you. Well, I think Pierre had some issues with his internet connection, so we can start with John Mussington that will present us his initiative in the Caribbean. So John, please go ahead.
No. Greetings, everybody. Greetings from the tiny island of Barbuda. Barbuda is part of the nation of Antigua and Barbuda, located in the West Indies. Now, I'm going to give you a brief rundown of what Barbuda is about and our role with regards to the community land trust movement. In fact, Barbuda is an exception in the sense that here is an island which has been communally owned by the community from emancipation up until present, and that system still prevails. We are experiencing some challenges now, so whereas, as Tarcyla explained, the community land trust model is being promoted as one which is seeing equity, and some are looking at it as the means by which we can overcome some of the global challenges. Here it is, we are facing challenges in terms of the elimination of our thing. So a bit of history. Barbuda was leased during the period of enslavement by one family, the Coddington brothers, and they leased it directly from the British Crown. In the absence of the plantation system operating in Barbuda, because Barbuda was used by the Coddingtons as a place where they did research in medicine, bush medicine, where they used the farming methods, the grazing of animals to actually supply food for the rest of their plantation holdings within the Caribbean. Barbuda was not a plantation economy because the island is flat. The highest point on Barbuda is just about 40 meters, shallow soils, and it just does not sustain the commercial type agriculture. So gathering provision grounds, grazing of animals, fishing, salt, charcoal, leather tanning, the skilled things that are required to run a plantation, these things were carried out on Barbuda. The enslaved people on Barbuda, because of the fact that they were not held in the kind of strict control on the plantation, they were basically expected to provide for themselves. And so because of that, the ability to transplant the system of common ownership, which applied in many indigenous areas, and especially in Africa, they were able to apply those concepts to the use of the resources on Barbuda. Because even as enslaved people, they had to provide their own sustenance, and they had the run of the island with regards to doing that in terms of their provision grounds, hunting, and that sort of thing. Now, this communal land system was formalized. Emancipation came in 1834 when the proclamation was being read out in Antigua. Barbudans only heard about it afterwards and basically said, okay, if everybody else is free after emancipation, then we are free as well. And so that system in terms of the communal land ownership persisted until it was formalized in 2007 in the form of the Barbuda Land Act. Subsequent to 2007, you had a situation under the Land Act where every Barbudan, once you reach the age of 18, you are entitled to 3 plots of land, one for residential purposes, one if you intend to engage in agriculture, and a third in case you were desirous of going into business. Now, the land you were allocated at age 18, that land remained in your family and can be inherited down the line. So a typical Barbudan at achieving the age of 18 actually immediately could exercise the wealth in the form of $300,000-400,000 when compared to other jurisdictions in terms of having that property value for which he can then build his home without having to go to any bank or mortgaging systems. The end result, the overall result of this system is that you have equality of access, which means an equality of benefits. Every single Barbudan had equal access to the resources of the island represented by the land. Now, with that came a sense of responsibility, because you know your use and access to the resources, the land, is hinged upon everyone else's access. So you developed a sense of responsibility towards the common good. Your use of the assets, the resources, had to be tempered by the fact that you understand that you have to pass that on to future generations. And that is the basis and essence of sustainability. So conservation and sustainability were used as tools to safeguard the future generations. So these are some of the advantages of the communal land system. So here we have a picture of the east coast of Barbuda, and this is some of the generations. And what that represents is that as young people, as Barbudans, they are guaranteed wealth, power, the benefits of their resources going forward. Now, Barbuda, as a result of this system, it remains one of the few Caribbean islands with a thriving coastal ecosystem and a protected national park. And in fact, in spite of the fact that on the national level, in terms of the economy, tourism is seen as the major source of wealth, for Barbuda, the local economy, the fishing and lobster export is actually the most important segment of our economy. And one of the best benefits of that is that our systems are clean, the best beaches you will see in the world, intact wetlands. Ecotourism is pushed as the means that we intend to pursue the future. And that is a result of the system that we practice. So this is a picture of one of the beaches on Barbuda, and the pink sand beaches are among world-renowned in terms of the beauty of the island. The climate crisis. In 2017, Barbuda was hit by the strongest, most powerful Atlantic storm known up to that point. And that storm hit Barbuda directly. So this is an aerial picture of the island right after the storm, and you can see the extent of the damage that we experienced. As a result of this 2017 hurricane disaster, Barbuda's communal land system, efforts were made to reverse that. And we experienced for the first time this whole notion of disaster capitalism. So everything that we have practiced for the centuries, one disaster came and immediately the central government administration, under the influence of others, made decisions as to what will become of Barbuda. And this land system is under threat, and we are faced with a situation where efforts are being made to abolish it so as to essentially recolonize the island. So as a result of the emergency situation, Barbudans were evacuated from the island. There was a state of emergency declared, and at first we felt the evacuation would have been just for a couple of days because of the threat of another storm. But what we found out was that the plans were not for us to return. There was prolonged military occupation of the island, and there was misuse of disaster relief funds and resources. The disaster capitalism captain, so what you're seeing there was the construction of an international airport. So even before the homes and businesses and the economy of Barbuda was restored, efforts were made to build this international airport, to start development processes aimed at redeveloping the island into a private island where real estate would be sold to millionaires. So what we're seeing here is that as a result of what we practice in terms of the communal land system, we were able to create a high quality island in terms of our resources. But that in itself turned out to be a bane, because we attracted the wealthy in the sense that they now saw that as an opportunity to turn it into a private paradise for themselves. So we attracted profiteers of extractivism and the commodification of our natural resources. So that is a challenge we continue to face. This was some of the realities that we found, some of the developments which emerged after the disaster. Fences were put up, properties were established, and whereas Barbudans one time had free access to every single inch of the island, we now began to see fences and private property signs, and actually, as you can read, the land grabbing from certain companies. Discovery Land Company. Look at the name, Discovery Land Company. Sounds colonial, but that is actually a conglomerate that operates throughout the globe. And their business model is to find these paradises throughout the world where they can redevelop for the purposes of providing enclave, charter cities, private countries for the wealthy. So this was a picture of part of our protected area, the Codrington Lagoon National Park, and this happens to be called Palmetto Point. And this was the picture of it prior to the disaster in 2017. This is what we faced immediately afterwards. The redevelopers came in, the bulldozers, that unique ecosystem of sand dunes, wetlands. What you've seen happening here is it being converted into golf courses and private property for the exclusive use of the wealthy. This is another picture of what is taking place, what took place down in that area, a protected area, a declared Ramsar site. Golf courses being put in, artificial lakes, and that sort of thing. This is a picture of around 2021, what the transformation of that area was looking like. And that entire point, even though it's part of our national park, even though it's a Ramsar site, that entire area was cordoned off. Barbudans no longer had access to that area. The transformation of the area. This is what it looks like pretty much today. So throughout, Barbuda is an example of the common land system being in use. The result of it, the islanders were good stewards in terms of producing a paradise. Then we have a disaster. And as a result of that disaster, we are faced with others now trying to reverse that system in terms of redeveloping the island as a private island for others. The good thing about it is that Barbuda have resisted those efforts. A movement was created from the 2017 disaster, and through legal action, through protest, through the actual physical coming back to Barbuda in spite of the challenges, in spite of not having electricity, medical services, coming back and re-establishing our community ourselves. That is the form of the resistance that we're taking, and it continues even up to today. Last year, 2024, there was a landmark victory at the Privy Council, our high scores, which established our right in terms of right to challenge governments in terms of changing our system against our will. So that is a summary of what we have experienced in Barbuda in terms of our land system, the dangers of that system in terms of the global situation where you do have a movement of privatization, of creating luxury enclaves for the wealthy. South America is being challenged with that in terms of the charter cities, the nations within the nations, and these secret agreements. But Barbuda stands out as a little territory fighting that and showing what can be done when a community is united in terms of defending its land system. So this was a picture of the decision at the Privy Council, where we actually won in the highest court in our system the right to challenge what is happening. So a Barbudan wildlife there in terms of our land turtle. And so in summary, that is the story of Barbuda, our experience in terms of the communal land system, the benefits we gained, and the challenges we face today in this global reality where others want to continue the system of colonization, wealth extraction, and exclusivity for the wealthy. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, John, for your testimony, and congratulations for the fight and the victories that are coming with it. I'm so sorry that I had a connection problem, so I didn't properly introduce you. But I put in the chat a bit about your CV and your different struggles, and we will come back to that in the discussion part. So if you have questions for John, feel free to put them in the chat and we will take them later. And now I'll pass the floor to Tarcyla to introduce our second panelist.
Well, I will introduce our next guest in Portuguese, considering that she is a Brazilian.
Santos is a community leader from the community of the Promised Land in the complex of Penha, one of the largest favelas of Rio de Janeiro. And she's also the general coordinator of the Sede da Misericórdia. This is an organization focused on agroecology, food sovereignty, and community development from basic community values. Anna, please, you have the floor. Hello, everyone. Let me see, I think my camera's off. No, your camera is on. I apologize because I have different computers. Good morning, everyone. It's so important to be here this moment and get to know other territories and to have the opportunity to talk about favelas that is still an invisibilized territory. And unfortunately, we suffer a lot. John, thank you so much for your speech. I am very energized by your history. It's a huge example, your work. And from now on, I feel like I'm even a stronger woman. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay. There you go. Perfect. So my name is Anna Santos. I live in favela. My mother is a Black woman from the favelas, and we are all here in the complex of favelas of Penha. This is a photo that we have of our complex. you see that the church, right, in the back of the photo is one of our main touristic points. And Peña Complex has around 16 favelas, and one of them is the Promised Land. That's the favela that I'm at. So the complex of Peña, we are located in the north zone of Rio de Janeiro, between the complex of Alemão and Juramento. And pretty much it englobes this whole place of the mountain of Misericórdia, or mountain of mercy. And it's pretty much this green area that has over 50 kilometers of green land, and we have about 27 neighborhoods. This is a protection area, an environmentally protected area, but that is a protection area to us, because I have here a community that has an immense green area with a huge potential for transformation based on popular sovereignty, that has a huge amount of water. We have over 20 water points, and many of them are not available because of the actions of this industry. And we have this huge green area in the middle of the city, known as a huge place for breathing clean air. And we have about 3 mining properties that explore this land for over 7 decades, producing cement, brittle, and in the middle of the city. And this is an important photograph because it shows the houses, the housing growing that area, but a huge amount of mountain and agricultural appropriate area. Am I going too fast, or is it okay? So despite the action of these miners, but why is that? You know, not by chance that we have this huge green area that is protected by the people, the locals. Here we have Leide, an indigenous person from Maranhão, and before building her own house, she started planting. And this history of this community that grows from the limits of this city, between the growth of Vila Cruzeiro, Alemão, and the favelas around it, like the Mountain of Faith, Grotão. We then have the Promised Land. This is a land that has around 200 inhabitants, residents, that are considered to be a rural urban area. It's a huge portal when you trespass one of those equal limits. And we can see here this photograph, we raise livestock that historically has always raised cow, pig, chickens, as a process for resistance and maintenance of this green area. But this green area has other interests. And here on the left, you can see that we have rock blocks that are produced in the Mercy Mountain. And this is Azul Bahia that was transported here illegally. And when we look at this whole potential of land, this picture was taken in 2018, in the beginning of the occupation process. And you can see that this amount of land, and in the back we have a quarry that is still working, who was interested really to have the green area in the favelas? Whose interest is it to think and consider actions of high level management and solidarity, building an agriculture that goes beyond planting in the community? And when we talk about this agriculture beyond planting with this whole land context and water context, we have food production. This was our huge knot for provocation and sensibilization for a community group that was pretty much used to not call it a green area or mountain of mercy, but to call it a quarry. So this image right here is not ours. It's not a photo of ours. This is our image. And how can we gain back that image and that memory from absences, from losses, right? Where all basic services like sewers and sanitation, water, electricity, pavement, everything comes from community actions like this one, where the residents build and maintain this territory. And here we have this sort of this brain map of we as residents, as leaders, and as integrants of the center of Serra da Misericórdia. This was a great element for us to gain access to actions that would go beyond social projects, but actions that would actually be concrete and organized from this green area. We tried to have this in English to make it easier for our participants, but these are actions that create movement, create resources, female resources, women's, especially with, we here, 60% of our community is composed by women. Most of them build their own houses and plant. And many women come from other favelas in the same metropolitan region of Rio de Janeiro, from other states that are very evident, like Maranhão, Serra, Recife, to to populate this area as a strategy for survival. I think it's important to say that this growth of this favela that starts here with few residences. Nowadays, we have this whole area with these houses. And now that I'm a young old lady and an educator, how can we maintain faith, but in a sense of hope? How can we continue to be hopeful and continue to see Serra da Misericórdia that on TV is seen with police operation where criminals are hiding, and where more and more the process of urbanization of the cities grows. And for those that live in the middle of an area like this is considered as a high vulnerability person. So how can we, from this scenario and this context, social, political, of a project of environmental racism, social exclusion, and loss of rights, of huge violent situations where police operations happen every 30 days. As a consequence, how can we think of this whole engineering process and all of these mechanisms that will involve children, the unique healthcare system, networks, kitchens producing food, but also, above all, producing the rescue and the reuptake of flavor and values and food that with this growth of the cities will not only expel us from these big centers, but also it conditions us to ultra processed food. And it was impossible to continue doing that without actually working with the environment. And not just think of this whole dynamic and all of these articulations for our community that would be able to help people dream again. This is our forest, but we have to look at our space and find it that it can be a social transformation space. And for that, with CACH, the catalyzing communities, SEM should become a stronger movement, teaching children agroecology in schools and revitalization of spaces where children would pass by so that we could have a new view of that place. The kitchen that produces snacks and the relationship of these mothers looking at the future of her children from Serra da Misericórdia, and together the catalyzing communities or started using the term collective territory. And while we were working in a perspective to just live and plant, that gave us elements to work with medicinal herbs, school agriculture, but the right to land. Here in Rio de Janeiro, we say that agroecology cannot just be gardening. And MST, the landless movement, we have to speak about the right for land and not romanticize this thing that is very important in Rio de Janeiro, that is agroecology. I'm talking about Afroecology. Anna, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I have to interrupt you, but okay, feel free to finish, that's fine. So, I'm sorry, I thought I had more time. So just to finish and show you my slide of what I'm doing and how this territorial work, we want the right to land, the community land in a participative way. I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. That was amazing. Pierre. I apologize, you guys.
Now we're going to switch to Spanish if you need the interpretation, and I'm going
For those that need the
to introduce
translation,
the
I'll
next
now
speaker. Elizabeth Andrade.
I'll now switch
She's
to
a
Spanish.
Peruvian
I'd like to
educator
invite
specializing in early
Elizabeth
childhood
Andrade.
education.
She
She arrived
is
in
a
Chile in the
teacher for
90s,
small kids.
and in 2015,
And in
she fled with her daughter from an abusive
2015,
relationship,
she got
and she
divorced.
found refuge in an informal
And
settlement known as Nuevo Amanecer Latino near the city of Antofagasta. And there she became a community
and
leader.
then she became
She
a
worked on
community
issues of
leader
migrants,
and
empowering
working with
migrants,
empowerment
and
of
also
women,
with
and
women,
also working with
many of whom had
women.
also been victims of domestic violence. She
And
became an
it is
advocate
something
for the
that
local population, and she's
she
been
is
key
considered
in
to have
obtaining rights,
the
housing
rights
rights,
to
and
help
basic
with
services in her settlement, as we're going to hear
for her
in her
presentation.
presentation.
And in
In 2022,
2017,
Elizabeth
she
received the National Human Rights
award
Award from the National
for
Institute of Human Rights of Chile,
the
becoming
first
the first
immigrant
migrant
woman.
ever to receive this important
And
recognition. We're going to
I
pass the floor to Elizabeth, and then we're going to see a short video that she's going to explain what it is about. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are, all those that are listening to us right now. Can you hear me all right? Yes, perfect. Well, as Pierre said, well, he described my personal situation. I'm a migrant settler that works on migration and issue and housing in Chile. Chile does not have the right to housing. There are some presidential decrees that make it possible to obtain subsidies, housing subsidies, but the application takes more than a decade, all the application process. In our case, we are settlers in very precarious settlements. We occupy the land basically for you to understand what it means. And we've been living in that space for a decade now. And also about the trust, it was very difficult for us to discuss this collective tenure of the land. Although we have a whole collective community organization, and when we work off the house, we always think of it in individual terms. That's what prevails. But in our case, we are in this process of unlearning and obtaining new forms of protecting the soil and our ancestry without being nationalistic communities, because within our space, we are a Latin American community, because 75% of the inhabitants are migrants, a group of migrants obviously are very criminalized. And we suffered racism and discrimination just because we are poor and because we don't have a formal education. We are not professionals, and because we are living in space, and because we are not white, of course, because we are also quite an Afro-descendant community. And we have settled in this country, and we want to fight for the right to proper housing. Why don't we watch the video for them to understand? I wanted to give you some context before that. I have video that shows all the work we do. It's a video done by a young settler. She's a singer, a rapper, and she made the video, the music, the lyrics. I hope you can hear it. This is my daughter, actually.
Si crees conocer más de lo normal, te juro no conoces nada, pues te voy a explicar. Esta sociedad tiende a señalar lugares solo por su condición social. Vaya, y tenemos sistema de medición que nos divide en porcentajes para obtener un techo, un lugar donde vivir. Aunque lo que veas no te agrade, o sí, vivir bajo cuatro paredes que con fuertes vientos se mueven, que el techo no sea ni de cemento, sino de calaminas que se vienen abajo cuando la lluvia se avecina. A estas hay que tener mucho temor, pues si no hay plástico de agua se llena el interior. El tema de la luz es algo complicado, pues los focos van al ritmo de la música de al lado, así que aceptación. Esto, compañero, no lo muestran en televisión, se encargan de mostrar las drogas y el alcohol, asesinatos y hasta la vil prostitución.
Ya se acabó.
Lo que somos y lo que luchamos para que un niño en Navidad tenga un regalo. La denigración está presente y aunque no lo crean se vive en forma decente. Todos creen que tienen solución a este problema que tiene ya tiempo. Creen que son Superman para tapar la realidad que genera lamento. Todos creen que tienen solución a este problema que tiene ya tiempo. Creen que son Superman para tapar la realidad. Recorriendo calles de color canela, casitas armadas en lomas de arena, un sinfín de plantas, el paraíso me rodea, cambia tu mentalidad al cruzar la acera. Miles de estigmas son los que nos catalogan por ser un trecho corto, el que se ahoga. Nos ha tocado enterrarnos con las mismas, levantarnos y encontramos mil y una forma de ayudarnos. Los pagos aquí no entran, dan la vuelta y corren, se hacen brígidos mandándonos los drones, promueven miedo a la comunidad. A esos les tirita vera cuando le hablas de igualdad. Yo, llámeme fresca de raja, pero aquí la riqueza del talento se disfraza, porque somos los sin casa, lo que ponemos cuero y alma y la frontera se traspasa. Tanto amor y aguante sobre estas tierras, todo mi pueblo es arte, de los Arenales formamos parte. No hay por qué callarnos si algo nos quema, todos con berraquera seguimos rompiendo barreras. Nos invadió pandemia, ya son 3 vecinos que perdieron la guerra. Aunque la batalla y el hambre ha estado fea, entre todos apoyamos a quien el virus golpea. Escuela popular de emergencia, para que las niñas te aprendan con paciencia. No somos ejemplo de la excelencia, pero imponemos respeto en las marchas con la presencia. Se activó la olla, arriba cacerola, vecinas pobladoras alimentando la pobla. Llévele, 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 plato de lenteja. Llévele, 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 arroz con arveja. Aquí está dispuesta la organización. Vamos a mostrarle a toda una nación que la zona que intentaron silenciar está haciendo más bulla que la autoridad local. A este problema que tiene ya tiempo, creen que son supermanos Dios, para matar la realidad que genera lamento. Todos creen que tienen solución a este problema que tiene ya tiempo, creen que son supermanos Dios, para tapar la realidad que genera lamento. Aquí todos iguales, muchas nacionalidades, poniéndole el hombro a todas las adversidades. Cuna de emprendimiento, los combativos. Aquí se consume lo que preparan y lo que traen los vecinos. Pancito, pescado, mazamorra, lleve la sopa y papa, casca la olla. Empanadas boliviana, ya está colombiana. Tamales casera, encargue pa' mañana. Toda base de organización necesita de mucha unión entre amigos, pobladores, compañeros y razones. Los compas no tienen nada de aquí de los talones. Tenemos claro lo que somos y lo que luchamos para que un niño en Navidad tenga un regalo. La denigración está presente, y aunque no lo creas, se vive en forma decente. Por la casa, por un techo, la vivienda es un derecho. Por la casa, por un techo, la vivienda es un derecho. Dale, dale, Arenales. Dale, dale, Arenales. Dale, dale, Arenales. Dale, 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 Arenales.
I hope you liked it. This was done in 2018. At that time in Chile, there was a big riot. We didn't manage actually to obtain many changes in the policy. Actually, things became worse. Many people were imprisoned, and we were punished actually because a law was passed afterwards against people living on occupied land. Those that occupy land since 2022, since the passing of the law, were going to be evicted. One thing that surprised us in this process is that we adopted this fight and we went out to the streets, and it's not common for migrants to go out to the streets to fight, particularly amid the revolution that Chile was going through. And that was always our principle. All the things we achieved in this process, like the the tenure of the land, the development of the master plan that is now being enforced as a national priority, has been obtained through fight and advocacy. Let's see if we can move on to the next. These are our sisters that work with us in a multi-generational way. You see the youth, the adults all together working in a community and collective way, deciding what's going to happen in this process. This is a 13-hectare lot of land that was occupied in 2015. There was an eviction order in 2016, and through working groups and fights and also training, we managed to obtain the project that became a national priority. So we turned around the eviction order that we had. These women that you see here are part of the coordinating group, and they work with more than 78 neighbors. And they led the group with us in order to move forward in the process that we are carrying out now. Let's move on to the next. There you can see the camp. Every white dot that you can see there is 2 housing communities that got together, 16 in all. And with each of them, well, first 8 obtained the official settlement, and the other 16 decided to join the fight in order to see the type of settlement that we're going to have. So in this process, we've already obtained the soil. The soil is ours. So we shouldn't give it into individual property. Let's give this to community property. So we are now in the process. We are still fighting for it because I think that one of the things that we still need is more technical advice in order to explain and convince the neighbors that although this is a self-managed fight, although this implies community work and all that, they are still not aware of the fact that mine is yours, yours is mine, and so on and so forth. Next. This is a very interesting visual because here you see 7 housing committees out of those 16. They cooked 100 rations of food per day. On average, it was 700 food rations for more than a year through our corporation. the corporation called Breaking Barriers. First, we were a group. Then they told us, if you want to have more resources, create a legal entity. And this allowed us to have access to other benefits. And now we're having accesses and applying for other benefits. But it's the community that leads this. And every neighbor created different forms of cooking. In some cases, they made Bolivian cooking, others Venezuelan cooking. So we managed to mix the different cultures. And initially, this showed us how strong we were, because we also have had a lot of problems, of course. So our big goal is the settlements, the housing, and we didn't deviate from that, although the government many times tried to dismantle this by offering houses to some of the members, trying to convince them to, well, leave that movement, this is a house for you. But our answer is always, okay, if you're going to give a house to me, we are 1,200 families here. Are you going to give houses for the 1,200 families? In that case, we will all go. But it was just a strategy used by the government to divide an organized community. And at the end of the day, we managed to have this. And we realized that when the government disappears, solidarity flourishes. And that was our motto in order to continue for a year and a half. And we've increased these soup kitchens, not to cover all, because we had 1,200 families, but at least we are reaching those families that had COVID, for instance, or had lost their families. So it has not been easy, but creativity worked very well. The distribution of the food also worked very well, and solidarity of the neighbors. We went into the houses and to try to see what food the neighbors were not using for more than 2 weeks. So we took those foods for the soup kitchen, for the community kitchen. I'm sorry, Ellie, we should be finishing. And we managed the government to contemplate accessibility, the access to housing. So we decided how we wanted that to happen. So we started saying, well, this is the option we have for example, DS49 is a kind of housing provided by the government with a minimum amount of debt. I'm sorry, she's having some connectivity issues. And now a consulting company is doing the design of the master plan. I don't know if you can move on to the next slide. And there you can see the planning of the settlement that is divided in 5 stages. First, the diagnosis that we had to do to see how many neighbors we were. Then the execution of the master plan, where we started also to look at the different spaces. And there we said that the fight should not finish with the house. The fight should begin with the house. And so within our master plan, we included care centers, not just child care, but also for senior adults and for women at risk. We have a polygon for building a space for women that are victims of domestic violence, and that's the idea. And we would also like to have the specific results. We are going to start with 250 families for the first block, and then we will continue with the development of all the settlements. So we're going to start with the initial 250 families. But we do our own check-in. So we check in the neighbors to see if they are truly involved, if they are truly participating. So we will start in December with the first construction in this neighborhood that will be called the temporary neighborhood until we can reach our permanent residence. That is for all the families, the 1,200 families. Then we have the settlement plan or the project portfolio, the construction of the subcenter, the urbanization, access to housing, also in a cooperative way and as a community. We started with high and low density buildings. We are thinking of condominiums of 4 to 8 floors, although there are some parts of the territory where higher buildings can be built. So perhaps in the future we can build a tourist hotel so everybody can visit, and you can visit us instead of going to other luxury hotels. And at the end, for instance, the idea is to have all the legal and administrative aspects covered. These are all the projects. That's our dream. As you can see in this layout, each of us, through conversations and dialogues, we've been able to have an architect, a friend of us, to create this model. Those circles are different houses. Those are different regional projects, the best regional projects throughout Chile, and we want to bring them to our project in our Latin American city. So we can have decent and proper spaces for all the neighbors. And in the middle, you can see a green bluish area. Those are the areas of care that we're going to have for the children, for the elderly adults. And as you can see, nothing is closed. The idea is all being together, having broken down with all the barriers. It has not been easy because we are also right now in a big political campaign. We're the first target of destruction, but we are fighting against it. We're working hard. So I always show this to the neighbors and I try to convince them, of course, we have to protect our soil. And this has to be the legacy for our children because they're also the part of our organization. Now, the youth are responsible for other areas in this space. So we're all the generations working together. And so that makes them think, and then they realize that we are right. So the idea is that at the end of the project, we all have this space as a space of care, resistance, and fight. Thank you, Elizabeth. in Chile, in general, we are seeing lots of evictions. So we are in a campaign for having no more evictions in Chile. Thank you so much. Thank you, Elizabeth. That was excellent, an excellent presentation. And congratulations for all the work. I wanted to ask you, in the introduction, I said that you had received the National Human Rights Award in Chile in 2022. Can you tell us what is that award for? I mean, what it recognizes, and in how has this award helped you in raising awareness with the government, for instance, in your negotiations? I blush when they speak about this award.
Hola,
Yes.
¿me escuchan?
Sí, sí, te escuchamos, Tarcyla.
Great. I would like to suggest, just for Elizabeth to take a little bit, maybe we can do a round with questions to our panelists, and then we left them time to answer all the questions together. What do you think? Yeah, what do you think? John, Anna,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, that's okay?
Yeah, I was suggesting to finish with Elizabeth and then go back to the others because we are over time now. But
Yeah, that's it, exactly. This is why I think maybe do this process to already do all the questions and just let them answer in 5 minutes. I think maybe
Okay.
could be the best. Okay.
Yes. Perfect.
Well, for John, we have here on our chat some questions for you. The first one is about the government. If the coalition that once was in government, and of course allow all this privatization process that you said, if they are still in charge. Well, the second question is also to John. It's a question about what additional legal property rights protection can be achieved by implementing a community land trust on the island, considering that you already have communal land. Why it's important to have another models, another ways to protect this model. Another question is for Anna. It's from Gabriela, and Gabriela is asking if there is some kind of tool for regularizing the land that is already being applied for the residents in the community in Terra Prometida. And of course, Anna, I would love you to talk a little bit more about the community land trust, the termo territorial coletivo, and how this model could help the Terra Prometida project and all the food sovereignty and the agroecological projects that you manage. Pierre, do you have more questions for John, maybe?
Yes, thank you. I wasn't able to introduce properly John before, but John is a biologist and a naturalist, and he mentioned that the community ownership of land has been key to preserving natural resources and the biodiversity. And so I wanted to know a bit more about that, about the link of non-speculative, non-private ownership of land and security of resources and biodiversity. I think this is a quite interesting element.
We will just ask you all to please stay in your 5 minutes to answer these questions. I know this is very hard, but well, all the broadcast will finish, so we really need to go in this 5 minutes. Okay, so that's it. Maybe we can start with John, after that Anna, and then Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you for those questions, and I will definitely stay within the 5 minutes. Now, one of the first questions I was asked is whether or not the administration, which is anti-communal land system, is still in force. The short answer to that is yes. Antigua and Barbuda, Twin Island nation, or parliament consists of 17 seats. Barbuda only has one of those 17 seats. So we are definitely a minority, and so they have the power to change laws and that sort of thing. And unfortunately, that particular administration has been in power since 2014, and that administration has always been anti-land and pro-privatization. Okay. The next question was about the community land trust and whether that would help in our situation with regards to the Barbuda communal land system. Now, in 2007, there was a law passed which actually formalized our communal land system. It was called the Barbuda Land Act. And that pretty much, you can look at it as the ideal as to what a community land trust would be. In essence, the entire island was one trust, and that law declared that land in Barbuda is owned in common by the people of Barbuda. Land shall not be sold. That is the basis of that law. Unfortunately, in 2014, when this administration got into force, they repealed that law. We were not able to get in place the necessary constitutional protections, and so they repealed that law. Now, the question is, what additional rights and protection could the community land trust model afford us benefits? I would say when we reach a situation when we're able to reestablish our system, I think there are a number of points, a number of benefits that the community land trust model, we will certainly be looking at those and certainly be implementing them. So for example, the whole notion that the land on the line is owned by everyone, but then property sitting on the land can be privatized and traded and that sort of thing. So that's the sort of thing that we will look at in terms of incorporating some of these more modern approaches to utilizing land and resources. And finally, within the 5 minutes, how does communal ownership protect ecosystems? Barbuda in 2017 was one of the most beautiful islands, some of the cleanest ecosystems, some of the healthiest environments that we can find in 2017. And that is a result of how we have stewarded the islands over the years. And what it boils down to is every Barbudan understand that he or she has free access, total ownership of land and resources. What that does is to bring in a sense of community and responsibility. So when you go out there and say, for example, you hunt or you farm or you do any of these things which utilize resources, you're doing so with the understanding that I have to use this in a manner so that my great-grandchildren can enjoy these benefits. And it created a community of persons that were very wise, they were very knowledgeable in terms of ecosystem management, local-based knowledge, traditional knowledge gain power, and that is what can happen when you use that approach. So those are my quick answers to those 3 questions. Thanks.
Thank you, John. We will come back to you for a final word at the end. If you have a message that you would like to share at the end to other community groups, or if there is something that other people in the world can do to help you and your struggle, please let us know at the end of the session. Now we are moving to Ana Santos. If you want to answer the questions that you received about the community land trust.
Well, you guys, this term for community territory in the Promised Land, we have been doing that for 2 years now. It was very important in the process that was born in the communities, and we were able to organize them as a process for community organization, but also as a way to engage our communities directly. We are placed inside of a favela that is culturally denied by the government, but we have our own parallel government here. And all of the orders and for the organization, they come from this parallel government. So for the community land trust, and thinking of Rio de Janeiro and the favelas that are constantly losing their own space for green areas and household areas. So to us, this is a privilege, and how from a privilege that is an absence, but also creates opportunities to build other ways of living where agroecology is fundamental for that process for community organization, where agroecology is part of this process of the right to land, considering especially food sovereignty local here. We do not have a deadline for that legalization. We used to have a meeting of 5 to 6 people. Nowadays, our meetings, we have a much bigger participation rate. We were able to establish our community legalization so that we could deal with property in a more legal and serious ways. And we are connected to organizations and that are led by women. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And I would also like to thank you all so much for my fellows. John, it's my dream to go there to see your space, your experience, and I ask you to bless me with your work. Thank you so much.
Definitely, and I hope to see you someday.
Thank you, Anna. And now can we hear from Elizabeth?
Elizabeth, if you're there, I would like to hear about the ownership of the land. You had the opportunity of going to Puerto Rico to get to know the CLT there of Caño Martín Peña in Puerto Rico. So what is it that prevents this from happening in Chile? Why you couldn't have a CLT in your camp? Well, since the dictatorship in Chile in the 70s, 1973, and throughout that process, to give you some context, very, very briefly, there was a whole process of changes in the economy, like I don't know how you call it, like a new revolution. They came from the US and they changed the economy in order to change the system that Chile was working under. Because between the 50s and the 70s, we had cooperatives, we had collective work. With the dictatorship, that all disappeared. So Chile, in general, is strongly based on industry, mining, the more neoliberal world, trade, individual trade. So that's what us foreigners come for. We come here to work, to obtain money, because apparently Chile is the one that pays the best in Latin America, apparently. I've been here for 34 years and I'm not a millionaire yet. And I think that's the idea. It's a question of culture, lack of education, about not thinking of yourself, but thinking of helping the others. And it has not been easy, as it has not been easy to work all together. It has not been easy to decide as a community. It has not been easy to get rid of our egos, to think that we can all be great leaders and be the voice of the others beyond the recognition. And you asked me about the national award and the importance of that. Well, I'm the first social leader in the history of Chile that has received this award, and the level of institutionalization of the person selected as the awardee of the prize gives you possibilities to open more doors. It makes things easier for you in some cases. So it allows me to work directly with the ministries, Ministry of Health, of Education, the Ministry of Women, and it allows me to advocate without being a partisan politician. I don't belong to any political party. I'm not. We are all politicians, but I'm not part of any party. But this award has allowed me to advocate and have a faster reach. In Chile, many houses are being evicted, but here in our camps in Antofagasta, we are part of a housing solution. And this has been thanks to the work of all the women here, the work that we have all done. And it has allowed me to be in the first line, to be the face of this, to show that people are organizing themselves here, and they are organizing and they are building their own houses because the government is absent. Thank you. That was a good message to share about your fight and institutionalizing the fight through human rights and this recognition that you won for all your work. We can go back just for a very short message. We can go back to John and then Anna.
John, if there is a message that you would like to share with people out there, any call or any.
Thank you. The short message from me is simply this: the communal land system, the community land trust model of utilizing the resources of your space is the most just, the fairest, and I think it is the answer to the global problems that we are facing. The climate crisis is fueled by greed. It's fueled by the disproportionate use of resources. It's fueled by exploitation, colonialism, and all that stuff. The model of community land trust and communal land ownership basically guarantees equity in access to the resources which are based on land. Once persons understand that equity of access, there is respect and regard for others, and that is the essence of sustainability. So for me, the message simply is, let us fight on to make the world aware that the South has the answers. We've always had the answer to this global crisis. And unless we adopt that, planet Earth will be doomed in terms of it being consumed by greed. So the South, community land trust, common ownership of land and resources, that is the answer to our present climate crisis. Thank you.
Thanks, John, for this great message. If there is any link that you would like to share in the chat, a campaign or something where people can support, please do, and we will also share it with participants. Anna,
yes, I'm giving you that just now.
Anna, if you have a last message or something you would like to share with people, you have 1 minute.
Yes, so we are here finding alternatives to live and not just survive. Next year, it is a very decisive year for us. And you guys see that Brazil during Bolsonaro's government, we've had many setbacks in terms of laws, bills that were paralyzed in our favor. And so we are very hopeful with the new movements with our ministers. And for the first time, we have the Ministry for Racial Equality. And this is the first time that favelas are gaining space. Now we have the network of favelas that did a festival presenting over 200 experiences based on nature. And so that's pretty much our message, that to many of you that know favelas to suffer with climate crisis, and we are the first one to suffer with the consequences. My message is that solutions will come from the favelas. Thank you so much.